India is ready to jockey for influence in the Horn of Africa. Why India must influence Horn of Africa? How influential is China in the Horn of Africa? Why Africa is so important for India? GS Paper 2, Bilateral, Regional and Global Groupings and Agreements Involving India and or Affecting India's Interests. What is the context about? Indian President's recent visit to Djibouti and Ethiopia suggests India is finally waking up to the extraordinary geopolitical significance of a region that is called the Horn of Africa. Delhi's growing commerce resulted in intensifying India's focus on Africa as a major economic partner. By the turn of the new century, Delhi declared that its national interests were no longer limited to the subcontinent but stretched from the Aden to Malacca. Why India must influence Horn of Africa? Many regional powers are now trying to shape the strategic landscape of the Horn through military bases and armed interventions. Djibouti, for example, is reported to host military facilities of Saudi Arabia and Qatar. India is somewhat late in joining the scramble for political influence in this critical corner of the Indian Ocean. More broadly, the new reliance on the sea lines of communication for India's economic growth saw the rejuvenation of India's maritime sensibility. Although India has not been able to meet this demand from Africa, defense diplomacy has become an important imperative for India all across the Indian Ocean littoral and will hopefully figure in the President's first visit abroad. How influential is China in the Horn of Africa? Beijing's infrastructure development in the Horn preceded the launch of the Belt and Road Initiative by President Xi Jinping. One of the more visible infrastructure projects in the region has been the 750 km long rail link between landlocked Ethiopia and Djibouti. China's geopolitical interest in the Horn has come into sharp focus over the last decade with the regular deployment of naval units to combat piracy in the Gulf of Aden. Although piracy has now come down significantly, China is raising its strategic profile in the region. Under an accord signed last year, Beijing has secured the rights to a base in Djibouti that can host up to 10,000 soldiers until 2026. This is the first ever foreign military base for China. Why Africa is so important for India? Crude oil holds center place in Indo-Africa relations. Currently, 70% of India's oil imports are coming from Middle East, mainly from Saudi Arabia and Iran. There is a need to diversify the portfolio of the crude energy suppliers to set off the problems created by any political turmoil in Middle East. Maritime cooperation. There has been a growing convergence between India and Africa on maritime cooperation and security issues. Most of the issues of common concerns are piracy, drug trafficking and security of sea lanes. UN Permanent Seat. Both India and Africa are keen to reform the existing global governance structures, especially the UN Security Council, UNSC. Africa remains vital for India's emergence as a global actor in the international institutional arena. Africa, largest market. Africa, which was once known as dark continent on planet, has changed its image. Now it has become growth pole.